The thing about that road is that I'd driven it 3 times before and never once paid attention to it, which is the kind of thing you say afterwards to make the story make sense. But I'm going to try not to do that. I want to tell it straight. I want to tell it the way it happened, in the order it happened, because if I rearrange it now to make a point, the point I make won't be the point that was there. It was the second Saturday in July. The heat had been building all week. By the Saturday, it was 31 degrees, and the air had that flat metal quality it gets when there's been no rain for a fortnight. I'd put the air conditioning on in the car before I got in, because I'd parked in the sun outside the co-op, and the wheel was hot enough to be uncomfortable to hold. My sister Liz had called while I was loading the bags in. I'd waved at her on the screen, said, "Give me a second," and then put her on the dashboard mount so I could drive and talk at the same time. She was telling me about a man at her gym. Felix's party was at 3. I dropped him at 11 that morning at Maddie's mom's house. Maddie being the friend, Maddie's mom being Caroline, a person I'd met 4 or 5 times and liked in the way you like the parents of your child's friends, which is to say without enough information to actually like them, but with the warmth of someone who has not yet given you a reason not to. Caroline and her husband had bought a place out near Stansfield 2 years ago. Old farmhouse, paddock, a barn they'd converted into a kind of party room with a sound system. They'd had Felix out there twice before, once for Maddie's birthday last year, and once for a sleepover in March. I'd done the drive both times. It's about 40 minutes from our house. You take the A road out past the retail park, then a B road through 3 villages, then a single track lane for the last 6 miles that winds through farmland and a bit of woodland and comes out at a junction with a wooden signpost. You turn right at the signpost, go another 200 meters, and the house is on the left behind a yellow gate. The yellow gate is the thing I remembered most. It's a bright primary school yellow, the kind of yellow nobody paints a gate by accident. Caroline had told me the first time that the previous owners had been a couple of artists who'd painted half the woodwork on the property in colors like that. There's a turquoise door on the barn and a pink window frame on one of the outbuildings. The yellow gate is the bit you see from the lane. Look for the yellow gate, she'd said the first time. You can't miss it. I'd put the address in the sat-nav anyway, the first time, and got there fine. The second time, I'd typed it in out of habit and ignored it because I knew the way. This time, the third time, I didn't bother. 40 minutes. Yellow gate. Right at the signpost. Easy. Liz was talking about the man at her gym. I'm telling you this because she was talking the whole way, and the talking is part of what happened. And the talking is part of why I didn't notice sooner. He's not even good looking, she was saying. That's the thing. He's not even good looking. He's got those gym arms that are too big for the rest of him, and a face like he's been very mildly disappointed for a long time, and I keep finding myself standing near him on the mat. I'm doing it on purpose, Em. That's the part I can't stop thinking about. You're flirting with him. I'm not flirting with him. I haven't said a word to him. You're flirting with him by proximity. That's not a thing. It's absolutely a thing. Proximity is 90% of flirting. I was on the A road by then. The retail park was behind me. The hedges started on both sides. I had the window down a crack because the air conditioning makes my eyes dry on long drives. There was a smell of cut grass somewhere. Someone had been mowing a verge. What does Greg think? Greg doesn't know there is anyone to think about. Liz, I'm not doing anything. I'm standing near a man on a mat. That's the entire crime. Standing near a man on a mat is the crime in literally every gym infidelity story I've ever heard. Have you heard a lot of gym infidelity stories? More than you'd think? She laughed. I turned off the A road at the second roundabout and onto the B road that goes through the 3 villages. Hardington, then Wreck, then Stansfield Magna. The first village comes up about 8 minutes in. You go past a primary school, a pub called the Carpenters, and a phone box that someone has converted into a tiny library. The phone box is red. There are usually books in it. I remember thinking, the first time I came out this way, that I should put some of Felix's old picture books in it on the way back. I never have. Tell me about Felix's party, Liz said. What's the theme? Pirates. Felix is 9. Felix is too old for pirates. Felix has not yet been informed that he is too old for pirates. He has his hat. He brought a hat with him this morning. The hat has a feather. What sort of feather? I think it's meant to be ostrich. It's bigger than his head. And the other boys are also in hats. As far as I'm aware, Caroline mentioned an inflatable parrot at one point. This is the best phone call I've had all week. Glad to be of service. I was through Hartington by then. I passed the carpenters. I passed the red phone box. The road bends left after the phone box and goes up a small hill towards Reek, which is the middle of the 3 villages and the smallest. Rake is basically a row of about 11 houses and a church with a wonky spire. There's a war memorial at the village green that lists 9 names from the First World War and 3 from the Second. I noticed it the first time because I'd had to stop there for a tractor, and I'd read all the names while I waited. I passed through Rake. The church spire was on my right. The war memorial was on my left. The tractor wasn't there this time. I went up the second small hill and down towards Stansfield Magna, which is the last village before the single-track lane. Stansfield Magna has a slightly bigger pub, the Bell, with hanging baskets that were doing their best in the heat, but had started to crisp at the edges. There's a left turn just after the Bell that takes you down past a farm shop and onto the single-track lane. Wait, Liz said. Wait. Go back. Pirates. I'm losing you in a minute. The signal goes funny on this lane. Pirates. Is there a piñata? Tell me there's a piñata. There's a piñata. Caroline texted me a picture this morning. It's a parrot. This is so much better than my Saturday. What's your Saturday? Tesco. And then the gym. And then thinking about the man. The man with the mildly disappointed face. Yes, I made the left turn after the Bell. The road narrowed. The hedges got higher. The light went from open countryside to that dappled green you get under heavy summer trees, where the canopy meets in the middle and the road is half in shadow and half in flickers of sun. The signal dropped to 2 bars. Liz's voice went tinny for a second and then came back. You there? I'm there. The lane's about 6 miles. I'll lose you at some point. Tell me when you get to the yellow gate. It's at the end. 6 miles. Right. Tell me when you get to the eggs. Aren't there eggs? The eggs were the first marker. I want to slow down here because the eggs are where it starts, and if I tell it too fast, you won't catch it. About a mile into the lane, on the right, there's a wooden sign on a post that says eggs in white paint, and underneath, in smaller letters, free range, 2 pounds per half dozen, honesty box. There's a small wooden cabinet next to the post with a hinged lid. The first time I'd come down the lane, I'd stopped on the way home and bought a half dozen. The eggs had been brown and warm, and the honesty box had been a tin with a slot cut in it. I'd put a 2-pound coin in. The eggs were the best eggs we'd ever had. I'd told Felix about the honesty box, and he'd been delighted by the idea. He'd asked, every time we'd driven out here since, whether we could stop on the way home and put a coin in. Every time we had. The eggs were a Felix thing. Yes. There's an egg sign, I told Liz, about a mile in. Get me eggs. I'm getting Felix. I can't carry a half dozen eggs back in a car full of 9-year-olds. There's only Felix. Felix and his pirate hat take up a lot of room. Fine, I'll stop on the way back, if they have any left. I drove on. I was looking out for the egg sign because Liz had reminded me. The lane went up a little, then down, then took a long bend to the right. I passed a gateway with a metal 5-bar gate and a sign for public footpath. I passed a clump of foxgloves growing wild at the base of a hedge. I was thinking about whether Felix would want a parrot piñata for his own birthday in October. I was not thinking about distance. I'd done this drive twice. The distance was a thing my body was supposed to know. The egg sign came up on the right. Eggs, white paint, free range, honesty box. I noted it as I went past. The little wooden cabinet was there. I drove on. Eggs, Liz said. Eggs. About 30 seconds later, I passed an oak tree with a tractor tire around the base of its trunk. I want you to stop with me here. I want you to stop because at the time I did not stop. The oak with the tire is the second marker. It's about 3 miles into the lane, not 1. The first time I'd seen it, I'd assumed someone had used the tire as a planter once and given up on it because there was no soil in it, just the rubber black against the bark. The tire is half rotted on one side. It's the kind of detail you don't forget because it looks like something out of a children's book. A tire, a tree, a hedge, a field beyond. But in real life, just sitting there doing nothing. I noted the oak with the tire. I drove on. I was talking to Liz. "What did you make for dinner last night?" she said. "Pasta, the one with the lemon. You and your lemon pasta. Felix likes it. Felix would eat shoe polish if you put Parmesan on it." I went round another bend. There was the egg sign on the right. Eggs, white paint, free range, honesty box. I did not in that moment react. I want to be very precise about that. I did not say, "Oh, that's strange." I did not slow down. I did not even fully form the thought, "I've already seen this." What I did was register, somewhere below the level of speaking, that I'd seen an egg sign already, and that this one was a second egg sign, and that perhaps the people who lived along the lane had put up more than one sign because the lane was long and they wanted to catch traffic from both directions. That thought happened in the back of my mind in the time it took to drive past the sign. The thought was so quick, I'm not sure I would have remembered having it if not for what came next. What came next was that, about 30 seconds later, I passed the oak with the tire. I will write what I did. I checked the dashboard clock. It was 2:41. I had left the co-op at 1:54. I had been driving for 47 minutes. The drive was 40 minutes. I was overdue by 7 minutes. That was the only thought I had that was alarming, and the alarm was not about the markers. It was about the time. Caroline would have started watching the lane for me. "Are you nearly there?" Liz said. "You sound distracted." "I'm nearly there. I'm on the last bit." "How long?" 3 miles or so. I did not tell her about the egg sign. I did not tell her about the oak. I am not sure why I did not tell her. I think it was because the lane is narrow and I needed to concentrate, and because I had decided, in some way I did not articulate, that the explanation was that there were 2 of each, and that I had simply not noticed the doubles on previous drives because I had not been looking for them. The lane straightened out. I went past a 5-bar gate. I went past a clump of foxgloves. I went past the egg sign. I noticed that one, the third egg sign. I noticed it the way you notice your own breathing when someone mentions breathing. Suddenly, with attention. And once you've noticed, you can't unnotice. I slowed the car down to about 15 miles an hour. The sign was the same sign, white paint, free range, honesty box. The little wooden cabinet next to it. The hinges on the cabinet were the same hinges. The slight crookedness of the lettering on the FF in free was the same crookedness. Sorry, I missed that." I said, "Is Caroline going to come outside, or do you go up to the door?" "She comes out. She always comes out. There's a buzzer thing on the gate, but she always sees the car and comes out." "Okay, I'll let you go." "No, stay on. It's another 5 minutes." I want you to know that I said another 5 minutes, casually, while looking at the third egg sign, and the saying of it did not at any point cause me to actually engage with the fact that I had seen 3 egg signs in what should have been a 6-mile lane. I said 5 minutes because 5 minutes was the distance from where I had thought I was, which was about a mile from the yellow gate. And where I had thought I was based on what I had seen, and what I had seen was the third egg sign, and the third egg sign meant I was about a mile from the yellow gate, even though the second egg sign had also meant that, and the first egg sign had been the first egg sign of the drive, and should have been the only one. I drove on. About 30 seconds later, I passed the oak with the tire. I'm going to write this part very carefully because this is the part I have been over the most. I passed the oak with the tire, and as I passed it, I looked at it. I looked at it for as long as I could safely look while driving. It was the same oak. The tire was on the same side of the trunk. The rotted bit of the tire was facing the road. The bark above the tire had the same pale gray lichen on it. There was a sheep in the field behind the oak. I had not noticed a sheep in the field before on this drive, but I had not been looking. The sheep was facing the road and not eating. I drove on. You went quiet. Sorry, concentrating. There's a bit where the lane gets narrow. I'll let you go. No, stay on. Tell me about the man on the mat. There's nothing more to tell. He was on the mat. I stood near him. He didn't speak. I went home. What was he wearing? A t-shirt. What did it say? It didn't say anything. It was gray. Boring. He's a boring man, That's not the appeal. The appeal is that he's there every Tuesday and Thursday, and I've started planning my week around him. That's the appeal. The appeal isn't him. The appeal is the planning. The appeal is the planning. There was the egg sign on the right. Eggs. Free range. Honesty box. I will tell you what I did. I did not stop the car. I did not pull over. I did not call out to Liz. What I did was reach for the sat-nav with my left hand and turn it on. The screen lit up. It said calculating route. Then it said 6.2 miles, 14 minutes. 6.2 miles, 14 minutes. From where I was, which was somewhere on the lane that, by my own count of the markers, should have placed me about a mile from the yellow gate, with about 2 minutes left to drive. I looked at the sat-nav for a second, too long. The car drifted, I corrected. You okay? I'm fine. The sat-nav's being weird. What's it doing? It says I've got 6 miles left. I should be more or less there. Did you take a wrong turn? There's only the one turn. There are no other turns. It's a single-track lane. Maybe the sat-nav's just not got a good signal. Maybe. I drove on. I passed the foxgloves. I passed the 5-bar gate. I passed the egg sign. That was the 4th one. I counted now. I had been counting since the 3rd. The 4th egg sign. Eggs. White paint. Free range. Honesty box. The same hinges on the cabinet. The same crooked F. About 30 seconds later, the oak with the tire. The sheep was still in the field. The sheep was still facing the road. The sheep was still not eating. I want to tell you what I felt, and I want to be honest about it. I felt the beginning of fear. I want to be honest about how the beginning of fear felt. It felt like the moment before a sneeze, when you know it's coming, and you can't stop it, and you have time to put down a cup of tea before it happens. It was that long, that kind of pre-feeling. I had time to put down my tea, and what I did with that time was I did not put down the tea. I drove on. I kept talking to Liz. I told myself, and I told myself in clear words inside my head, you are tired, you are hot. You have done this drive 3 times, and your memory of it is unreliable. There are probably 4 egg signs along this lane, and 4 oaks with tires, and you have simply never paid attention before. That sentence is so absurd, written down, that I almost can't believe I thought it. 4 oaks with tires. As if a tractor tire planter is a feature people install at regular intervals along a country lane. As if the same crooked F gets painted on 4 different signs. As if the same sheep stands in 4 different fields facing the road and not eating. But I thought it, or something like it. And the thinking of it allowed me to keep driving, which is what I wanted to do, because Felix was at the end of the lane, and Felix was 9, and Felix was waiting. Yes. You've gone really quiet. Are you sure you're okay? I'm sure. I'm just trying to concentrate. The lane keeps going. The lane keeps going? It's longer than I remembered. How much longer? I don't know. Maybe I took a wrong turn somewhere. I'll be there in a minute. I'll call you back when I have Felix. Are you lost? I'm not lost. I'm on the lane. There's only one lane. I'll call you back. I hung up. I want you to know that I hung up. I hung up on my sister because I could feel that if I kept talking, I would have to tell her. And if I had to tell her, I would have to admit that I was telling her. And I was not ready to admit that I was telling her, because telling her would make it true, and I was not ready for it to be true. I drove on. The lane was the same lane. The hedges were the same hedges. The dappled green light was the same dappled green light. I passed the foxgloves and the 5-bar gate and the egg sign and the oak with the tire and the sheep. 5 times now. 6. I stopped counting. I want to tell you what I noticed, because this is the part I keep going back to. I noticed that I had stopped feeling afraid. I noticed it the way you notice that a song has been playing in the background of a room you've been in for a while. I noticed that I had been not afraid for some number of minutes. I noticed that the not afraid had a quality to it. The quality was that the not afraid felt like the right thing to feel. I was on a lane. The lane was beautiful. The light was beautiful. The hedges were full of cow parsley. The sheep was on its 5th or 6th iteration, almost a friend. I was driving to pick up my son from a birthday party. I had been driving for a long time. The driving was fine. The driving was something I was doing. I want you to understand that this was the part that afterwards was the worst. Not the multiplying landmarks, the not being afraid of them. The sat-nav was still on the dashboard. I had not looked at it for some minutes. I looked at it now. It said 4.1 miles. 9 minutes. The miles had gone down. The miles had gone down by 2. I had been driving for, I checked the clock, 8 minutes since I'd hung up on Liz. The miles had gone down by the right amount. The lane had not been longer. The lane had been the right length. I had been moving along it at the speed I had been moving along it. And the miles had come down, at the rate the miles should come down. And the only thing that had been impossible was the landmarks repeating. And the landmarks had now, I realized, stopped repeating, because the last egg sign had been some minutes ago, and the last oak with the tire had been some minutes ago, and what was on either side of me now was a stretch of hedge I did not recognize from any of the previous drives, with a gate I had not seen before, and a field of yellow rape beyond it that I would have remembered. I want to say what happened next. The lane straightened. It widened slightly. The hedges thinned. The dappled light gave way to open sun. On my right, a wooden signpost came into view. The signpost was the signpost. The one I knew, the one at the junction, the one I'd been driving towards for 40 minutes. The arm of the signpost pointed right and said, in carved letters, Marwood House. That was the name of Caroline's place, Marwood. I had forgotten the name was Marwood. I had thought of it as Caroline's, the signpost, said Marwood House. I turned right. 200 meters along, on the left, the yellow gate. The yellow gate. Bright primary school yellow. The kind of yellow nobody paints a gate by accident. Caroline was standing in the gateway. She was holding a glass of something with mint in it. She was smiling. Felix was on the gravel behind her, in his pirate hat, the feather slightly bent from being sat on. 2 other boys were behind him. There was a parrot piñata deflated on a deck chair. Caroline said, you made it. I was about to text you. Sorry, I said, sorry. The lane was, I don't know what happened. I think I might have been on the wrong lane. Oh, the lane's a nightmare in the summer. The leaves come over and you can't see the turns. People do it all the time. Right, sorry. Hi, Felix. Mum, Felix said. We did treasure. Did you? We did treasure and we did the parrot and the parrot is dead. I can see. Maddie's mum let us hit it with a stick. Of course she did. I made small talk with Caroline for the regulation 7 or 8 minutes. I refused the drink. I accepted a slice of cake wrapped in a napkin. I took the party bag. I took the goodie bag for the friend who hadn't been able to come, which Caroline had made up anyway. I asked the appropriate questions about how the party had been, and Caroline gave me the appropriate answers. Felix got in the car. The pirate hat went on the back seat. The feather got stuck in the door. I freed it. I waved at Caroline. I drove out through the yellow gate. I turned left out of the gateway, past the signpost, and onto the single-track lane back the way I had come. The hedges were the same hedges. The dappled light was the same dappled light. The lane was again beautiful. Mum, Felix said, after about half a mile. Are we stopping for eggs? I want to write what I did. I gripped the wheel. I did not look at the sat-nav. I did not look at Felix. I kept my eyes on the lane. Felix, I said, tell me about the treasure. The treasure was chocolate coins, and there was 1 real coin in it, but it was a foreign coin from Maddie's granddad. Are we stopping for eggs? Tell me about the parrot. The parrot had a lot of sweets in it. There were too many. We had to put some back in the bag because Maddie's mum said we'd be sick. Mum, are we stopping for eggs? Did Maddie have a good birthday? Yes, Mum, the eggs. We'll see, Felix. You always say yes for the eggs. I know. You said we could stop on the way. I know I did. We drove. The lane was the lane. Up ahead, on the right, the egg sign came into view. Eggs. White paint, free range, honesty box. I did not slow down. Mum, Felix said. Not today, Felix. We're late. You said. I know. Not today. Why not? Because I said so. He went quiet. He went quiet in the way 9-year-olds go quiet when they're storing a grievance for later. I let him. I drove past the sign. I drove past the oak with the tire. The sheep was not there this time. The field was empty. I kept driving. About a mile on, Felix said, Mum, you missed it. Missed what? The eggs. We just went past the eggs. I saw, sweetheart. We're not stopping today. No, the other one. The first one. You went past the first one and didn't even look. I want to be very still here. I want to write this very still. What do you mean the first one, Felix? There's 2. There's the first one near the start of the lane, and there's the one at the end, near Maddie's. Maddie's mum told me. She said the first one's older. She said, it's the one her neighbor put up before he died, and the new one is the one his daughter put up after. There are 2 egg signs? Yes. You've seen too. Yes. Maddie's mum took us on a walk one time. We walked all the way to the first one. We took eggs, and there was honesty money in the box, and Maddie's mum took the money out and counted it and put it back and said her neighbor's daughter empties it once a week. Felix. What? How far apart are the two egg signs? Like 4 miles. I don't know. It was a long walk. We had to have a sit down. I kept driving, and I kept my eyes on the road, and I did not look at Felix, and I did not look at the Satnav, and I tried to think about what Felix had said. 2 egg signs, 4 miles apart, identical presumably, because the daughter had copied the father's. The daughter had probably used the same paint and the same stencil and the same kind of cabinet. 4 miles apart was not the same as 30 seconds apart. 4 miles apart was a long walk that required a sit-down for a 9-year-old. 30 seconds apart was not a thing 2 real signs could be. But Felix had said 2, and I had counted 5 or 6. We came round a bend. The signpost for Hardington came up. The first of the 3 villages was ahead. The single-track lane was behind us. I had not noticed it ending. We were back on the B road. The dappled light was gone. The sun was full and flat, and the heat haze was on the tarmac, and the air conditioning was on too high. I turned it down. Mum. Yes, Felix. Are you cross with me? No, sweetheart. Why would I be cross with you? You're holding the wheel funny. I looked at my hands. My knuckles were white. The skin over the bone of my left thumb was almost gray. I let the wheel go a little. The blood came back. Sorry, Felix. I was concentrating. On what? On the road. We went through Hardington, the carpenters, the red phone box, the primary school. The phone box had a child's drawing taped to the inside of the glass. A dragon. I had not noticed it on the way out. The drawing was in crayon, and the dragon was green, and the child had written Dragoon underneath. The phone box passed. Mum. Yes, Felix. You drove past the first egg sign on the way to Maddie's, did I? I saw it when we came past. I was going to ask if we could stop and get eggs on the way home, and you didn't even slow down. I thought maybe you didn't want me to ask, so I didn't ask. On the way there? Yeah, you saw the first egg sign on the way there, not the way back. Yes, you're sure, Mum, yes. I drove through Rake, the War Memorial, the wonky spire. I drove through Stansfield Magna in the wrong direction, which is to say the right direction for going home. The bell with the crisping hanging baskets. I drove, and Felix sang to himself in the back seat, something he'd made up about pirates, and I held the wheel, and I did not let my knuckles go white again. The thing I want to tell you, the thing I am writing this down to tell you, is that on the way to Maddie's, I had passed the first egg sign at, I now know, about a mile into the lane. That was the real one, the original one, the one the dead neighbor had put up, and then I had driven another 4 miles, and I had passed the second egg sign, which was the daughter's one, near the end of the lane. That was real, too. Both of them real. Both of them ordinary. What I had seen between them were not extra signs. I had not been counting extra signs. There had been 2 signs, 4 miles apart, and I had passed each one once. The thing that had been doubled was the between. The piece of lane between the 2 egg signs. The piece with the oak and the tire and the sheep. I had driven that piece of lane more than once. I had driven it. I am writing this and trying to be exact. I had driven it 5 or 6 times. The miles on the sat-nav had not lied. The sat-nav had been measuring the right distance to the right gate. The clock had not lied. I had been driving for the right amount of time. The lane had been the right length. The hedges had been the right hedges. The light had been the right light. The only thing that had been impossible was that I had spent 47 minutes inside 4 miles of it, and the 4 miles had felt like a single drive, and the single drive had taken me to the place I was going. I had not been lost. I had been held. I want to tell you that I felt afraid when I worked this out. I want to tell you that I pulled over and shook. I want to tell you that I called Liz and told her. I did none of these things. What I did was drive. I drove home. I made Felix a sandwich. I let him watch a film. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea I did not drink, and I looked at the wall. I have not been back. We have not been to Maddie's again. Felix has asked. I have told him Maddie's mum has been busy. Caroline has texted twice to invite us. I have made excuses. The excuses have been thin. The excuses have been the kind of excuses that, if Caroline thinks about them at all, she will think come from a woman who has, for reasons she doesn't understand, decided not to be friends with her anymore. I am writing this. I am writing this, and I have just noticed I am writing this, and the noticing is the thing I want to leave you with. I sat down to tell my husband about it 3 weeks after it happened, and the words came out as a story about how the lane had been longer than I remembered, and the satnav had been confused, and I thought I might be tired, and he had nodded, and said it sounds like you need a break, and I had agreed, and we had moved on. I had told him the safe version without deciding to tell him the safe version. The unsafe version stayed in my mouth. The unsafe version is what I am writing now. What I keep coming back to is Felix in the back of the car saying the eggs and meaning 2 signs, and me in the front of the car having seen 6, and the gap between 2 and 6 being a thing I drove through. I drove through it. The car drove through it. The wheels of the car turned a real number of times against a real road, and the road delivered me where I was going. The road was kind. The road was not trying to lose me. The road was holding me gently, while it played me a piece of itself on a loop until it had finished with me. I do not know what it was finishing. I do not know whether it was finishing something with me, or whether it was finishing something else, and I happened to be the piece of weather it was finishing it inside of. The way a storm finishes inside a particular field. I do not know how many other people have driven that stretch of lane and arrived somewhere they were going and not noticed. I think most of them. I think Felix, on his walk with Caroline, walked through it twice and did not feel it because he was 9 and walking with adults and counting his footsteps. I think Caroline drives it every day and has never felt it. I think it does not want to be felt. I think I felt it because I was on the phone and not paying attention, and once it had me, it had to wait until I noticed, and I noticed late. The thing I cannot stop thinking about is the not afraid. The middle stretch. The minutes during which I drove past the eggs sign for the 4th and 5th time and felt that the egg sign was a friend. I have tried, since, to put myself back in that feeling and ask it what it was. It does not answer. It was a feeling and it has gone, but I know that I had it. I know that I sat behind the wheel of my own car and looked at a thing that was impossible and felt warmly towards it. I know that I have, somewhere in me, the capacity to feel warmly towards an impossible thing. I did not know that about myself before that Saturday. I have not picked Felix up from anywhere out of town since. I drive to school. I drive to the supermarket. I drive to Liz's, which is in the same town and takes 9 minutes. When Caroline texted last week to ask if Felix wanted to come to Maddie's harvest thing in October, I told her we'd be away. We will not be away. I am not afraid. That is the worst part. I am writing this and I am not afraid. I am sitting at the kitchen table and the kettle has just clicked off, and I am going to go and make a cup of tea, and I am going to drink it this time, and I am going to be fine. I am fine. The road is 40 minutes away and I am not on it. Felix is upstairs. My husband is at football. The afternoon is ordinary. I want to be afraid because I think being afraid is the correct response. I think the woman who drove that lane that day should be afraid in her kitchen 3 months later. I think the not being afraid is the same not being afraid that the road put in me when I was driving through the loop, and I think the road put it in me on purpose, and I think it is still there, 3 months later, working quietly in the background of my Saturdays. What I am afraid of, if I am afraid of anything, is that one day Felix will ask me to take him out to Marwood for a harvest thing or a fireworks night or a sleepover or a wedding 20 years from now, and I will say yes, and I will drive him there, and the lane will hold me again, and this time it will hold me for longer, and I will not notice. I will arrive somewhere. I will be fine. Felix will be fine. The afternoon will be ordinary, and there will be a 30-minute stretch of my life that I drove through and gave back without ever knowing I had given it back, and the gentleness with which I gave it will be the part that nobody, including me, will ever be able to retrieve. That is what I wanted to tell someone. I have told you. I do not feel better. I do not feel worse. I am going to make the tea.